For those of you that aren't familiar with Forefront, we are a statewide association in Illinois that represents both grant makers and nonprofits, as well as their advisors and allies. Our mission is to build a vibrant social impact sector for everyone in Illinois. We do that through our Chicago office, my office in West Central Illinois, and our additional headquarters in Springfield. And we provide education, advocacy, and research, and work to mobilize our members around campaigns that advance the sector. Before we let Tina take it away, I have given everyone permission to talk. As I mentioned, if you were here a little bit earlier, we do want this to be more like a conversation, so please feel free to ask questions when the time arises. If you prefer to be muted, I will be monitoring the chat bar, so if you'd like to ask a question that way, I will be sure to draw attention to it. If you are in a noisy setting, we would ask that you just mute your microphones while you're not talking. If you have the ability to share your image, please feel free to do that as well. There's about 10 of us, so I know we would certainly like to see your faces. If not, no worries. We have made our faces available to you, so you feel like you're talking to some humans. And just as a note, we are recording this webinar, so we will share a link with you after in case you'd like to review the presentation or just for general reference after that. Are there any questions before we begin? Can everybody hear me okay? Yes. Excellent.
Yep, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Excellent, thank you.
I can hear you.
That was Jen.
Yes, I can hear you too.
Olivia.
I hear you too.
Fun, okay. All right, well, without further ado, Tina, I'm gonna pass it over to you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Lily. Well, thanks everyone for joining today. I've been able to attend and enjoy many seminars by Forefront, so it's a little different being on this side. But as Lily mentioned, we'd like to make this a conversation, so I'm trying to give you as much information as possible, but also have places within the presentation where I'd like you to share, because we all learn from each other. And then there'll be some slides kind of towards the end, a little bit dense. I will probably go over them more quickly so we have time for questions. And then, as Lily mentioned, she will pass that on to you. So let's get started. Again, this was designed as sort of a just kind of overview of nonprofit fundraising, but there's a lot of materials that anybody at any level can benefit from. So just to give you a little bit of a background, about, I actually started my career, you know, we all come to the nonprofit sector sort of in different ways. I actually started with congressional aid in Washington, D.C., and then I got involved in political fundraising for the Democratic Party, which included time here in Chicago. At some point, I sort of became disillusioned and decided I needed to try and do something else. But before I started my nonprofit career, I actually took time off and went abroad. I was planning to teach for about a year, which had turned into 4 years. And the last year I was overseas, I thought about what could I do with my abilities moving forward in my experiences. And I felt like raising money for the nonprofit sector was something that would really resonate with me and allow me to have an impact. So I have raised money for 4 different nonprofits in the Chicago area for the last 25 years. And I also ran an endowed private foundation for 6 years, which is very interesting. I think for anybody who's ever raised money for a living, giving money away is appealing. And unlike many people, I actually went back to fundraising after I worked for a foundation, maker, but actually I think it made me a better fundraiser. It was really helpful. I'm happy to share that I retired from full-time work on June 30th of this year. I am a certified professional coach, and I'm doing some more kind of part-time basis with nonprofit professionals on their career transitions. And, you know, to continue to participate in the field as possible. So I'd love everyone to share just a little bit about yourself, your current position in your organization, and what's your level of fundraising experience? So, Tulani, could you begin?
Oh, yes. Congratulations on your recent retirement. That's
Thank you.
exciting, I'm sure. So yes, I'm new to Chicago as of this year, and I am basically, I would say the director at large. I'm not the executive director, but I am building Melvina Masterminds on the west side of Chicago, and it
Okay.
is a tech and art center.
Oh,
So we have the building, but we have our work cut out for us in
uh-huh.
terms of everything, and that's really the majority of the budget is for the building, a $2.5 million budget.
Okay.
And my level of experience in fundraising, I've always been blessed to work with nonprofits after they've been around at least 20 years.
Okay.
So I would say it's very minimal in comparison to starting a whole new organization versus, going in and kind of leveraging technology and changing things up to be more modern when you already have such a deep foundation of people that are invested in your cause. So I feel like in a way I'm starting from point zero, and again, new to Chicago from LA, so I am here to learn a lot.
Okay, great. All right, Jen.
I'm a brand new development director for our organization called CHIME. We're the Chicago Center for Music Education.
Uh-huh.
I have very little background knowledge in fundraising. I actually was the fundraising chair for our preschool the past 2 years.
Okay.
And the president of our board actually saw what I was doing, and he reached out to me and asked if I would consider a career change. So with a lot of meetings and a lot of interviews and a lot of soul searching, I decided, why not? I feel very passionate about children. I used to be a teacher. So I'm not fully away from kids, because now I'm raising money for kiddos in Chicago that are in the diverse areas, would have diverse abilities, and have economic disadvantages. So I'm raising money for them for our school to come in and provide music, since CPS does not make it mandatory to have music in their schools.
Right. Great. Terrific. Well, thanks for joining us today. Olivia.
Hi. So I can speak for Phoebe and I. Phoebe and I both work for NACSA, so the National Association of Charter School Authorizers. It's a national nonprofit that's been around for about 20 years, so not new. I think it sounds a little different in the fact that our fundraising isn't focused on Chicago. We mostly rely on national funders. And Phoebe and I have been I'm the development manager, and Phoebe is the vice president of development and operations. And Phoebe's been in her role about 2.5 years, and I've been in this role for about 2. So we're not super new, but we're always looking for new tips and ways of going about this work and learning from others that are doing this work in the field. We're not super closely related to kids, but we work within the larger education reform structure.
Okay, super. And then Maura. I'm sorry, I hope I said your name correctly.
It's Mariah.
Mara. I'm sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can now. Yeah.
So yeah, it's pronounced Mariah, but I know.
Okay.
So I am doing a career change. I used to be an elementary school teacher, and I'm now volunteering on the board at a private preschool in Evanston as the development chair. And then I'm also have been working on some fundraising for a public school that my kids go to. So I'm just wanting to learn as much as I can about development and fundraising and grant writing to help out both schools and then also further my career.
Okay, terrific. All right, well, let's get started. And again, my contact information is at the end. So if you have any questions as we move along and we start to run out of time, feel free to contact me separately if there's specific areas you'd love to learn more about. Okay, so let's talk about how much money is given away in the U.S. every year. $427 billion was the data point from last year for 2018, which, when you think about it, is a lot of money. Americans are incredibly generous, and we have a lot of great nonprofits doing wonderful work. One of the things that I think surprises people if you're new to nonprofit fundraising are these figures down here. A lot of people think, we all spend a lot of time developing corporate relationships. But what's really interesting, and I've watched this survey for probably 10 years now to see what has changed year to year. And corporate donations have stayed pretty flat. It's right now about 5%. It's not changed from recent years. And foundations this past year went up a little bit. It's now at 18% of total giving. Obviously, foundations and corporations are really important in your giving portfolio. But it's individuals who really give 70% of all charitable gifts in this country. And 3% of the nation's wealthiest households provide 2/3 of individual giving, which is pretty amazing. But obviously, we want to build relationships from donors on all levels. The other thing I would encourage anybody who's in fundraising these days is bequests, planned giving. People are about 9% of all giving is from estate gifts. And for smaller nonprofits, I think this is always a challenge because they think like, oh gosh, universities, hospitals have attorneys on staff who work on planned giving. But everybody can find ways to promote this to your donors, and absolutely should be. We are about to see the largest transfer of wealth in the history of this country from baby boomers to the next generation. And if you have people who have been supporting your organization, you need to make sure that they are also considering your organization in their giving. Interesting fact here, women are actually far more charitable than men on all economic levels. And for couples where you have a man and a woman, women make most of the philanthropic decisions in their households. So something to always keep in mind as you're developing your relationships with donors. So where does all that wonderful money go to? So the recipients last year, 2018, on these categories, 29% were religious organizations. So people giving to the church, their synagogue, their mosque. What's interesting about this is this number was fairly significantly lower than it has been in the past. And that is consistent with the fact that fewer people in the United States are aligning themselves with an organized faith or attending on a regular basis. Education has stayed pretty steady at about 14%. That's primarily people's alma maters or their children's schools. Human services has also stayed fairly steady, about 12%. So all organizations deal with the homeless, shelters, as well as food pantries, anything that helps people improve their lives. Foundations is one that's actually gone up, and not significant recently, but in previous years. So people decide, I'm going to take some of my wealth and create a family foundation or give to a community trust like Chicago Community Trust. And the other thing is donor advised funds are really becoming more and more popular. So maybe someone says, I don't have the capacity to create a family foundation, but I do want to create a set aside a fund. And people can do this through their financial institution. They can do it through their, like Fidelity, any of the wealth management companies, as well as organizations like Chicago Community Trust or the Evanston Community Foundation. So about 9% go towards health organizations, such as hospitals and disease-specific organizations like American Cancer Society. 9% is not going to international organizations. This is a number that is much higher than it used to be. Not really surprising, but I think it went up like 4 or 5 points from the previous year. We are giving more across borders and especially with a lot of the natural disasters that have happened across the world. Arts, culture, and humanities has stayed pretty flat at 5%. I think the thing that always surprises me about that number is the fact that we think of some of our Chicago institutions like the Art Institute or the Field Museum and the large budgets that they have and the large gifts that they are able to secure. And to think that they only receive 5% of that $427 billion. But going back to looking at, they are definitely very successful with the nation's wealthiest households and secure, oftentimes 6- and 7-figure gifts. The environment and wildlife has gotten stronger, but still at about 3%. And then individuals, we're seeing more and more individuals actually not give to nonprofits, but give directly through microloans or GoFundMe pages. So if anybody wants to share what makes up their organization's fundraising portfolio, this would be a great time to do that. Obviously one of the things you want in your fundraising is diversity. And of course, many nonprofits also receive government contracts. One of the challenges, obviously, we saw in Illinois a few years ago is when you have a state that's having budget challenges and nonprofits are not getting those funds, it created a really, really dire situation for some of our peers, especially if they did not have a diverse funding portfolio. If they were primarily government funded, this really posed some challenges. So would anybody like to share about for their organization, what your makeup is of your organization's portfolio? Okay, just go ahead and email Lily at any time and we can share those questions.
Well, I have a quick point.
Sure.
So again, we're really new, and I didn't want to say this because you might get into it.
Right.
So in terms of, I think every nonprofit is there. I mean, we're so new. We're trying to get Forefront to be like our fiscal sponsor. But I know that people want to see a track record. And by the way, I've tried to show my picture. I don't know why. I don't think yeah, it won't let me show. So, but okay. I am here. But the thing about the track record, it's tricky where it's like, well, we want to see what you've done. And it's like, all you can talk about is kind of what you plan to do. And we have actually done events, and we actually did receive money from the city. So one fund, and then because of the founder behind it, we use his shows. So we have like allotted money. We want to tap into entertainment, frankly, even more. And now that you mentioned men don't give, I want to be very creative in getting men to give to help other young males and men in the community. But I mean, would you have anything for me to be mindful of other than, hey, just have a diversified, goal of receiving funds? Anything else that you would want to say for somebody in my position that's very new and early?
Yeah, I think it's important we'll talk about that a little bit later about getting individuals involved in your organization. So I think what will be really key for you is that networking and finding individuals who want to get involved. And again, men are generous. It's just that women just happen to be a little bit more in the same economic levels, but you want people broadly. But yeah, let's move on a little bit, because as we talk about that funding, I'm going to come back to this slide, but let's talk about this. So, what are the prospects for relationships? And this is one thing that I always tell people who are new fundraising, especially board members. This is really about building relationships, right? So Tulane, you're kind of at that point where you're building relationships, right? You have to have that people for money. So a lot of times people think, oh, I'm going to start out here in the general public, the outer skin of the onion. But where you really want to start is here. Okay, so who cares about your organization the most? It would be the staff and the board, right? People who are absolutely committed to the organization. And, we all expect board members to raise money, but they also have they come with different levels of experience and comfort level with raising funds. And also encourage your staff to find ways that they can become involved with fundraising too. Because everyone has to go out and share. So you really have to start with who does your board know? Who can they connect you to? And then you move out to your current supporters, which if you're in your organization, you may not have many yet, but that's how building those relationships and meeting people. But one of the things that's really important for any nonprofit nowadays is keeping our current supporters. Recent data has shown that all nonprofits are burning through individual donors really, really quickly. That means we're not retaining them. They might give to us once or twice, but they're not staying with us. I mean, there's so many organizations now. And of course, with social media, it's so easy for people to reach out to potential new supporters. So, but you really want to retain your current supporters and of course, get them to give more. And then potential individuals, foundations, corporations. this is where you spend a lot of time doing research. And that's one problem for you, Talani, that you're going to have to really spend time on, is because, again, rather than just going to the general public, you need to figure out the foundations and the corporations and the individuals who your mission resonates with. So other people in Chicago, institutional donors in Chicago that have really connected with similar missions to yours. So that's why the things I always remind people of: start here and work your way out. So let's go back just to the last slide. So these are some new areas of fundraising. I won't spend a lot of time on them, but I do want to mention them because organizations have to get more and more creative all the time. So one thing is social enterprise models that people are setting up. So they're raising money. They're also finding ways to create businesses within their own nonprofit. A good example of this is the YWCA of Chicago. You should, if you have time, go and look at their website. But what they basically did are finding ways that they can actually secure money. So, for example, there are a number of organizations in Chicago that serve a particular client base, and they've also started businesses that provide jobs for that client base, and then have a business where they're selling products to the public and to their supporters. So we're going to see more and more of this. Corporate partnerships used to be that corporations were more interested in writing checks and sponsorships or grants, but now they really want to develop partnerships with nonprofits and are looking for skills-based volunteering. Their employees are interested in being connected with you and volunteering for you. So this is an area where, as you're thinking about how to develop more corporate partnerships, hopefully you're with an organization where you can have some skills-based volunteering. B Corps. We see more and more companies are setting up where basically when they establish themselves as a business, they have a very designated feeling about giving back to the community. So they may just say, from the time they begin their business, we're giving 10% back to nonprofits. They also are very mindful to how they set up their businesses in regards to the environment or how they attract their employees. We already mentioned GoFundMe and other direct-to-recipient models are becoming more and more popular. And I would also mention the importance of peer-to-peer platforms and apps that any nonprofit can use. Some of them, yes, some can be fairly expensive, but more and more you have to give a way for your board members and your volunteers and your staff to reach out to their own networks and make it easy for people to give. And also I encourage everybody to look at the value of monthly giving programs. Because, like I said, if we're burning through our donors quickly and they're giving to us once or twice and then moving on to other organizations, we have to find a way of retaining them. And one of the best ways to do that is through monthly giving programs. People tend to give more, because if you go to a donor and say, will you give $300, at the end of the year, a lot of people might say, no, I can't afford that. If you ask someone, can you give $25 a month? It's a lot easier for people. Are there any other areas of fundraising that any of you are currently working in or know of that we didn't mention yet? Okay, so let's move on then and talk about those different key components. So why do corporations give money to nonprofits? Any thoughts on that?
Two thoughts: tax write-off, and because it's the right thing to do.
Okay, great. Any others? Right, absolutely. Those are certainly things that motivate companies to give. The other thing is a lot of times these funds come out of marketing, right? It's an opportunity to market and to say, as Delaney mentioned, it's the right thing to do. I want to show my customers that I'm giving back to the community. So that's also how companies sometimes determine their causes, right? If you are a company like Alta that primarily sells to women, you're more inclined to give to causes that they identify with. So as you're looking to expand your relationship with companies, you really need to educate yourself and identify and do the research to ascertain where that interest is. So some of you are working in the education field. You really want to see what companies in the Chicagoland area have been giving to support education advancement. And that's where you really want to start. And then you want to figure out through your board members, any current corporate funders you have, how you can make those introductions. You know, with foundations and corporations, obviously they are institutional entities and they have processes in place for you to apply for those funds. But they're also run by individuals. So, you know, again, with that relationships, I really encourage you to try and get to know the program officers or the representative. Find if you can meet with them, present your organization's work. Ladies, this is probably really important for your organization because you're new and you really have to make that case for support and who you are and what you're trying to do. But really developing those relationships, doing your research will save you time in the long run. It takes a long time to apply for funds through an institutional donor. So make sure that you're seeking the right donors to begin with who actually already have an interest in what you're doing. So a lot of that applies to foundations too. So there's a number of different types of foundations. If anybody wants to share what some of those types are and maybe ones that you've worked with. Okay, so, okay, go ahead.
Are you talking about like the Coca-Cola Foundation? You mean like corporations that have foundations?
Well, that's one, right? So there are different types. So now we're moving into foundations that are also 501c3s. But you're right, Delaney, it could be corporations can also have set foundations where they've taken a lump sum of money and placed it into an entity that they establish it as a foundation and they give grants from there. So corporate foundations is one. Any others that people are familiar with or work with?
Can I ask a quick question about the corporation?
Yep.
When you said to do the research to see if the mission aligns, you know, with education, how would you go about doing the research to find out if a corporation mission does align with your mission? Yeah, absolutely. So one place that I always start when I go to work at a new nonprofit, and I've worked for a number of different types of nonprofits. So I look at similar organizations. Who in the marketplace is doing similar work to us? And I start there and go to their website or their annual reports and look at what corporations and foundations are funding them. And then I go there and then I go to those company and foundation website and say, okay, what are they giving grants to? What are their priorities? You know, the internet has helped us a lot. And obviously you can also work with Forefront because they have a great library. We're back before the days of the internet. You used to go in and pull books off the shelf and do research, but now you can work with their librarians too and set up a refined search of what you're looking for. If you are, and so many of you are Forefront members, I really encourage you to start there as well as a source to find where those matches might be. Does that answer your question? It does, thank you.
Okay, terrific. So we mentioned corporate foundations. A lot of foundations are considered private foundations. So probably the best example of that everyone's heard of is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So here's people who have incredible wealth. They took their wealth, they put it into a foundation. It's called a private endowed foundation. So that means they can never touch that money again, except to give to charitable causes. The IRS has given them a huge tax break for that, and they can never use that money again for their personal wealth. So what they do is the foundation then lives off the interest from the endowment. So the IRS requires you to basically spend about 5% a year, and there's a whole calculation of several years. So foundations, they're invested in the stock market. If there's a really good year, they may have gains of more than 5%. They can decide whether or not they want to give that away. But then there are years when we had the economic recession where they're getting less than 5%. And then that really hurts nonprofits because during that time of the Great Recession, many nonprofit foundations did not give as much money away and they had to reduce their grant making. So those are private foundations. Again, you see a lot of now family foundations where people are setting up their own family foundations. Oftentimes family foundations are harder to find research on because they tend to be a little bit more private. But anybody who sets up a foundation, they have to file an annual tax return. And again, as you're doing your research, I really encourage you to also look at people's 990s, which is their tax returns, because if you look at a foundation website, their guidelines may be fairly broad. And you think, oh, my organization completely fits within these guidelines. Hopefully they also have their grants list on their website, but if they don't, find their 990, and you can do this online through a number of different nonprofit support organizations. And because you really want to look at where are they giving their money and what are their average grant sizes, because that gives you a lot more information. Again, you want to make smart decisions about where you want to spend your time. So we talked about corporate foundations, private foundations, family foundations, and then there's also what we call community foundations. Again, in our area, Chicago Community Trust basically was set up to raise money from the community to then give it back to the community. So they are a fundraising entity and a grant-making entity. And so also, this is where people may have some of these donor-advised funds as well. Maybe if they say, I don't have enough money to set up a private foundation. I don't want to file a 990 every year, but I do have some money that I want to set aside. So the minute I take, let's say $100,000 out of my personal wealth, set it into a donor-advised fund, then that's where it needs to stay. And I can give my charitable donations through that, that entity, that donor-advised fund, through my community foundation. So you often see the Chicago Community Trust will go out and raise money so that they can give money away. Does that make sense to everybody, or any questions about the types of foundations? Any that I missed? Okay, great. So again, you know, it's about research, educating yourself. We talked about looking at other entities that have similar missions as yours. And then looking closer and diving deeper on their websites, on their 990 tax returns. And then the other thing is, again, use your current funders in your board of directors. Who do they know? Who can they introduce you to? You want to build, again, a relationship. See if you can meet with people at the foundation prior to applying for a grant, if possible, at the very least, try and have a phone conversation. Takes a lot of time to do a grant proposal. Well, you want to make sure that you're applying to a place where you have a chance of being funded. Oftentimes, too, it's a multi-tier process. You have a letter of intent or a letter of inquiry first, and if you get past that, then you may submit a proposal. Always be mindful of deadlines and grant levels and post-grant reports when you're working on that, because you're trying to, if you secure foundation funding, you want to make sure you keep that funds for as long as you can. So those post-grant reports are really, really important to get into your funder and to tell them what's going on. And when I say grant levels, make sure you're applying for the right amount. You know, and as a the foundation I ran for 6 years, our grants average between $10,000 and $25,000 in human services. And, you know, people, sometimes we get proposals in, I never had heard from a potential grantee, and they'd ask for $100,000 for 3 years, you know, for a total of $300,000. They hadn't done their homework. We never funded anything that large, and we didn't do multi-year grants. It said so right on our website. So this is where it's really important that you do your homework. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so what matters most in fundraising? The next few slides are some data that I'm sharing from a seminar I attended about 1.5 years ago that was done by a national nonprofit consulting firm where they interviewed individuals from across the country about their giving. But making the right match, I would say, applies to any entity, whether it's a foundation or a corporate giving program, but particularly for individuals. So our jobs as fundraisers are finding the intersection between someone's philanthropic vision of what they want to do with their money and the mission of our organization. And when you have that fit, that is the sweet spot that you want to get to. These are the things that matter to individuals in this national survey. want to know that the money is used wisely. So it's beginning with that thank you letter when you thank them for their funds. You need to continue to communicate with them to let them know, whether it's through e-newsletter, print newsletters, annual reports, e-communications. They need to know that you're using their money wisely. A good reputation. This is challenging, right, for some of you with a newer organization, because you don't have that reputation in the marketplace yet. But so you need to find people who have that strong belief in your mission and your cause. And people need to know that their support makes a difference. So all of those things are all rely on us as fundraisers and communicators to continue to share that throughout the year someone is funding us, or the years that they're funding us. Also from the same seminar I attended, is about how individuals feel most engaged. Now, what's really interesting about this is financial contributions and volunteer time. So to the right is the most engaged, to the left is the least engaged. So it's interesting to me that people feel more engaged by financial contribution than volunteering their time. But I also think that's indication to how much time people have, right? I think all of us would like to volunteer more, but between our careers and our families and our own interests, we find that really difficult. But if you have supporters who volunteer and are a donor, then that is a highly engaged individual. So next comes to information and recognition. They want to hear those personal stories. They want to know how they're impacting and how they're making change. And that's something that's really important for us as funders too, is we can talk in large numbers and impact that we're having, but personal stories about how it makes impacted individuals' lives are really, really important. But be sure that you're sharing those updates with your supporters. The other thing is a thank you note or even a gift. I've done gift campaigns. I've not done them for annual fund donations, but I have been surprised by the number of nonprofits that are moving away from an actual thank you letter. A lot of places have moved to just doing the electronic thank you that you received if you give online. This is your first place that you can tell that donor that you appreciate their support and that's making a difference. So I really encourage you all to have a really well done thank you letter that you update periodically that really tells the donor the impact it has, and it's sent to them in a timely manner. Next is participation. So if you're an advocacy organization, getting people to contact their elected officials. Fund runs and events are very popular. Displaying your support down to networking. And then in the channels of communication, which I encourage all of you to be using cross-channel communications with your donors, meaning you utilize all of these. This tells you how they feel most involved. Now, what's really interesting about this is direct mail. I remember going to a professional development about 10 years ago that said direct mail is dead. Not going to be continuing. I don't know. I get about 5 pieces of direct mail in my mailbox every day. So it's definitely not dead, but we've all moved to more cost-effective ways of communicating with donors as well. And email obviously is equally important. It's important that we keep our websites current and fresh and tell new stories on those websites. And the least favorite where donors want to be communicated with by us is text messages. Social media, we are all utilizing it, but what the researchers said about the responses about text messages was that a lot of individuals, feel that text messages are how I communicate with my friends and my family. I don't want to be contacted consistently by nonprofits. The really interesting sharing. And I think obviously all of these you have to utilize in your communication with supporters. I won't spend a lot of time on this in being mindful of your time, but these are all sort of donor channel preferences. A lot of us don't have the money to do radio, TV ads in our nonprofits, but these are some of the ways. Direct mail, they still want to receive, that peer-to-peer fundraising component, that thank you note or that phone call. I really encourage you, if you have board members who are not comfortable with fundraising, or they're new to fundraising, calls. You know, when you get the big push of individual gifts at the end of the year, give each of your board members 5 thank you calls to do in 1st of January. People really appreciate that. Newsletters, emails, you know, find ways to communicate your organization's story with your supporters. They want to know what you're doing with their money. A thank you gift. Again, some organizations utilize this. Birthday card. It's a great way with, you know, key supporters is another touch. And then going down from there, again, texting, not popular, phone calls. Phone calls for soliciting funds tend not to be popular. The only place I've seen that, the place that really works well is with universities and using student phone bankers to raise funds. That tends to have impact, but don't want to be solicited.
I have a quick question about the birthday card.
Yeah.
So I definitely do like the personalized touch of that. And I was just kind of curious because I was looking at previous platforms that, you know, kind of have these plugins to raise funds, but basically manage a CRM better. And do you, I mean, how comfortable would you say, or have you seen any research on how people feel in regards to providing this type of personal information? I mean, obviously it's optional, but normally I'm used to holiday cards, but I think the birthday card is way cooler.
Yeah, it's definitely a good question. I've seen, you know, when people have, you kind of acquire birthday information sometimes, like with your key individual supporters, as you get to know them, you might discover that and make note of that. Otherwise, you can, you can provide that. Some people put that information through their social media, and also they, you know, one that's really great is, like you say, people raising money for their birthdays for your nonprofit. That's becoming very, very popular. I think if you want to survey your donors or provide a vehicle for them to share that, I encourage people not to have years. People are more likely to share their birthdays with just their month and their date and not the year. Because again, from a standpoint of security, and also some people just don't want to share their birth year. But if you want to try and get that information from your donors, I encourage you to do it without asking for the year they were born.
Thank you.
Okay, great. All right, then we'll move on. Again, if you have any other questions, just unmute and jump in. So relationship mapping. Oh my gosh, LinkedIn has made this so much easier, right? So you have a new board member, they come on board, you meet with them, you talk about, you know, who do you know, who could you bring into the organization, who could you introduce us to, and oftentimes they'll say, gee, I really don't know anybody. So then you have to kind of sit down with them and sort of identify who they do know. But the first thing I do when we get a new board member in organizations, I look on their LinkedIn account. Who do they know, and who do they know that I want to know? So you really try to help people through that way. But the importance about relationship mapping is, again, are there people that you've already identified that you think would be great supporters of your organization? And then try to build a way to expand that relationship and reach out. The other thing is to really remind that core group of individuals who are involved with you, which is your board and your staff and your current funders, is that they care about the cause that you guys are advocating for. And they know people who are going to care about that cause, right? One of the things that we did effectively when I was at Women Employed before I retired was we had a large luncheon every year, 1,000 people attended. We had staff who were able to sell tables or tickets for that. And we had staff who were younger in their careers and they didn't have friends who could buy even a ticket for the event. But everybody could buy raffle tickets. And it was a way that they promoted, you know, and asked their friends and family to support the organization through a very easy donation of selling raffle tickets. In fact, we used to have a staff competition for who could sell the most raffle tickets. So there's just sorts of ways of that you can figure out who you want to meet, who people know. And again, relation mapping is important, but utilize LinkedIn to see who your supporters and your board members know. So building individual relationships. So So Annie, you guys are doing a capital campaign, right?
Yes.
What? I'm sorry.
I said yes, yes.
Yes, okay. So a lot of support, obviously you want to look at corporates, foundations, but a lot of support for capital campaigns does come through individuals. So again, it's the same thing, researching, figure out who you want to meet, who does your board members know, who is supported like similar in the organizations in the area that you want to get to know. Find out a way to meet them, invite them to an event, a lunch or a coffee, ask people for advice. You know, again, going back to that skills-based volunteering, people care about your cause. If they're going to give you money, they care about what you do. Is there a way that you can get them involved or seek their advice or their contact knowledge? You know, find ways to introduce them to others, send them updates and general background. And everybody in your organization can be involved in relationship building. And learn about their interests. When you meet somebody who has the potential to support your organization, particularly at a higher level, listen to them. I've done some training through the Lilly School at Indiana University on fundraising. I encourage any of you, if you ever have the opportunity to attend any of the courses, they're really excellent. And I attended one on major gifts many years ago, and the presenter was the major gifts officer at Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. He never got involved in any donations that were smaller than $5 million. So, I mean, it was amazing the type of, you know, individuals who go to the Mayo Clinic and who support the hospital. And one of the things that he said at that seminar that I'll never forget, and I utilized many times, he said, your donors will tell you everything you need to know if you only listen. And I think as fundraisers, we are you know, we go set up a lunch date with someone. We feel that we have to pitch that person the whole time. We have to talk the whole time. We have to tell them how wonderful our organization is. But we need to learn why they're interested and what they care about, and find ways that, you know, your organization may have many programs and they may be interested in one particular area. But if you really get to know people, you're going to learn a lot more. Because if you are pursuing a large gift, the cultivation cycle is 12 to 18 months, and for more significant gifts. So it's really key that you get to know your donors. And then, you know, making that case for support. So you do have to make the case for support. One thing, Delaney, that is helpful for you is donors don't fund the past, okay? They fund the present and the future. So they want to know what you're doing, and they want to know what your plans are for success down the road. And the time frame for this decision making is by them. So we all have fiscal years, we have campaign timelines, things that we need to abide by. The donors don't, right? It's going to be when it works for them. So by the time you get to asking someone for a gift, and primarily a major gift, you need to have the right person to ask at the right time in the right way for the right reasons. Okay, so everything else you've done before that, your research, your cultivation, will have taken 80 to 90% of your time. You know, the biggest mistake fundraisers make is rushing an ask. So when I say the right person at the right time in the right way for the right reason, so that means if you're asking somebody for a major significant gift, like some of the cultural institutions have just received in the city, they're not sending in a junior fundraising professional. They're sending in the president of the institution to ask for that gift. And you should know that you have a really strong likelihood of them saying yes. Okay, so I'm gonna stop there for a minute. We have about 10 minutes left. Any questions or thoughts or personal experiences anyone wants to share at this point? Okay, then we'll move on. Again, I know I've loaded a lot in these slides. You can, as Lily mentioned, review them later, contact me with any questions you might have. Again, I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on this one, but just to remember the headline, stewardship is cultivation and cultivation is stewardship. Well, let's say you've been successful in securing a gift from a donor. So you identified that donor and you qualified them, meaning you knew that there was a potential interest in your mission. You educated yourself about them and you developed a strategy. You cultivated them, you involved them, you asked and you negotiated the gift, meaning maybe you asked them for 50,000, maybe they gave 25. But now you go, you've acknowledged it, and now you want to steward that gift for renew. So most nonprofits are now utilize a donor-centered fundraising, which I strongly recommend, which is where it's very superior customer service to the donor. And what you want to do is, how many times a year can you touch that donor? Act with them. So let me just tell you a really quick story. I was in a capital campaign for an organization that had never done a major gifts campaign before. I came in as the vice president of development, and they support, had some government grants and had some corporate support, and they just had individuals at a lower level. So we had to get a major gifts program running really, really quickly. So we had some current supporters who's provided donations for the campaign. It was for a shelter for homeless youth. And then we met some new people. So one of the couples that we met, we developed a very good relationship with them. They gave a significant gift to the campaign. And, you know, we got to know them as individuals over time. So we're now in this cycle, right? We're now in this cycle. We're not going to walk away from these individuals. They've given us a significant more money down the road. So one night I was watching something on WTTW. It was about a fishing lodge in British Columbia. And the next morning when I got into the office at 7:30, I called this donor because I always knew he was at his desk early in the mornings. And I said, Peter, I just saw this WTTW last night about this fly fishing place up in British Columbia. They're only open a short time every year. And I just thought you might be interested in checking it out. And it was complete silence at the other end of the phone. And he said, Tina, I watched that same show last night. And I've already been on their website this morning to make a reservation for when they open in the spring. And he said, I can't believe you know me that well. And I said, well, I've been talking to you for 2 years. I know that you've flown around the world to go fly fishing. And then he said, and I can't believe you took your time to call me and share that. And then he asked me, is there anything else? And I said, no, nothing else. So you want to develop that relationship with your donors so that it's more beyond just the transaction, okay? That you have established a relationship where you hear them and you have a personal relationship with them as well. That's the ideal situation. That couple, she is now the chair of the board of the organization. Okay, so things to remember as we start to wrap up here. In steward-driven relationships, they want to know, people want to have confidence in the organization, and namely the management and the board leadership. They'll come to trust you. Major donors especially will assess your level of truthfulness and record of success. And again, donors need to know. They need to know the gift was received. They need to know that the funds were utilized as intended and that the project or program is having the desired effect. This is an ongoing communication through all those channels we talked about. Building those relationships is all about cultivation and making the case for support. Again, donors will fund the present and the future, so they have to know what your plans are. Rejection is part of the normal process, right? So if you're new to the field, you have to determine over time, is it a rejection, one that I need to just walk away from? Someone says, no, I'm never interested. Or is it, I'm saying no now, and I want you to continue to stay engaged with me and learn more. Maybe there'll be support down the road. That's one of the things that you sort of have to judge over time. But again, you can't take rejection personally. Oftentimes, you know, like I said, people have so many opportunities to fund great organizations. And here are some common hurdles. Why sometimes nonprofits are not successful. So it might be a lack of different sources of funding in the philanthropic portfolio. Again, too reliant on one source of funding. And obviously when there's downturns in the economy, it impacts all sources of funding. that time spent on relationship building takes away from other things. If you're a small organization and you've got a lot to do, relationship building and fundraising will take away from time that goes to the program or mission delivery. It's really important that your senior executives do know that fundraising is a high priority. If they do not think it's a high priority, that's a challenge. You need your ED, your president, to be one of your key fundraisers. Board members, oftentimes board members are reluctant. They don't feel comfortable with fundraising. They don't have any experience with it. So we as fundraisers have to work with our board members to help them be successful. Oftentimes, the story I shared, I went to an organization that we had successful campaigns, but we had not spent a lot of time as an organization prior to my arrival building relationships with donors. And if you do not have a strong case for support or longer term plan to share with donors, that's clearly going to hamper your fundraising efforts. So that's kind of a quick overview. Thanks for everyone's interest today. I'm happy to answer any questions at this time, or here's my contact information if you want to contact me separately about anything that we shared today. I'm happy to do that, but let's open up the mics now, and anyone can share anything they'd like to in regards to their own experiences or anything we discussed today, or ask. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Trying to let somebody else go. I feel like I've been talking too much, but I appreciate everything that you presented. I was very excited about this webinar. If Lisa was on, she would definitely second that. So my question, I actually want to go back to what you mentioned about the YWCA in terms of like their social, I guess, enterprise, or I'm assuming you were referring to their store. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. So one thing that I've been very vocal with my team about is, right now, well, some of September wasn't ideal, and even this month in terms of the stock market and all that. But I am very concerned about the fact that we will be operating a building on top of programming. And so I'm very focused on trying to look at ways to bring in, frankly, revenue and income. One great thing about having the space is it will be designed to rent out for individuals if they want to use main floors, and there's things like that we're exploring. But I was just curious to know, how do you, or should I be concerned, how does that get communicated in, hey, this is the mission. We do want to, we need help in terms of donations, but we are also looking to create, this piece of a revenue stream in terms of whether it's online, and we are exploring part of it being a small storefront to show what members of the community do. But yeah, I don't know if you have any other examples, or just how, that also gets into the finances of you always want, like, you're in need of money, so they don't ever, you don't ever want to have too much left from a budget perspective, but I just don't want to be solely reliant on other people's money. Right.
So does your organization have a strategic plan yet that you've set as far as how you're going to move forward over the next few years?
So we don't have a strategic plan tight in regards to fundraising per se, but we have, like, the business plan, the budget. I will say we are highly dependent on, information to learn from Forefront, as well as a few other resources around, like, curriculum that I'm leveraging for a quick education. But in terms of, like, a strategy just for fundraising, no.
Okay, so you're developing your strategy. You have a business plan. And how many people on your board so far?
3. Very small board. We have the founder, myself, 2 consultants, and 3 interns. So very, very small team.
Okay. Yeah, so I think, your fundraising plan will come out of that business plan. I think you're smart to have that revenue generation component in that. And one thing I would encourage you to look at as you're trying to grow your board is people from the community who have some business expertise who maybe could help you with that. And look at some other models. And again, Forefront can help you identify those. Here in the Chicagoland area, nonprofits have been successful in doing that revenue generation in addition to the philanthropic support. I think it's a really smart way, especially when you're starting a nonprofit nowadays, to include that. A lot of funders like to see that. So I think one place you could look at is what are other people doing? And then you get some ideas from there too, but what things you could do to be unique. I think renting your space is a great idea. It's also a way that people are going to learn about your mission, your organization. And then getting people who have content expertise on your board, who, you know, business people who are maybe able to contribute to some of that would be another next step that I would suggest you try to undertake.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for the example of the YWCA. It was nice. It's nice to see that and how they have the placement on their website. So I'll definitely be referencing them.
Yeah, and the Y really, under their current leadership, they were actually an organization that was struggling 10 years ago here, and they had a new leader who came in from the business community and brought some really great new ideas to it, and they've been highly successful. So yeah, definitely take a look at theirs more closely. And then, so there's smaller examples too. The Y is big, but there's smaller organizations too that, you know, the same way that you set up a B Corp, the way that you can set up your organization, you're starting from square one. And so incorporating that into your plan, I think is a good way to start.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions before we wrap up?
I had a quick question about relationship mapping.
Yeah.
So I'm new to the board and I don't really know a lot of the board members and also don't know a lot of the management and staff. That like, how would you recommend kind of having a like authentic, organic kind of conversation to figure out relationships and who people might know, and just yeah, obviously I could go to LinkedIn and kind of do some of that, but in the face-to-face relationship building, what kind of questions or things would you suggest?
Okay, so is that with the other board members as you expand? Okay, right. Yeah, so one of the things that I think is really helpful is as you're trying to determine people's comfort levels is really working with board members one-on-one, getting together for coffee or lunch, and finding out their comfort levels of fundraising, find out what their experiences are, and then starting the conversations that way. I always find it's challenging, like in board meetings, when fundraising comes up, you know, people start to go to the restroom, you know, because there's this very differing feelings about fundraising on boards. But really find out if you have anybody on your board who has that expertise. So again, this organization I went to is Human Services. They were not a fundraising board, but here they were in a capital campaign. So we had an external campaign consulting that did like a Saturday morning crash course on fundraising for our board. And the consultant asked a really interesting question of the group. How many people have experience with fundraising? How many people have raised this amount of money? And some hands went down. So how many people have this raised amount of money? Hands went down. How many people in this room enjoy fundraising? And the only two people whose hands were still up was myself and one long-term member of the board. I spent a lot of time with them the next year to 2 years because he wanted to fundraise, he knew how to fundraise, and he wanted to. And then we had to figure out how the rest of them, how we could bring them along and get them involved. So I think it's really those one-on-one conversations because when you talk as a group, oftentimes people feel uncomfortable. But going into those, determining people's comfort levels, and then helping them identify their networks. Because the first response a lot of people will give you is, I don't know anybody. I don't think I know anybody who has that kind of money. But it's more, like I say, it's about just introducing the organization to their networks, urging people. Do you have an annual event or any sort of fundraising event?
Yeah, we have an annual event in the spring.
Great. And do they fundraise for that and bring their networks to that event?
Yeah.
Okay, great. That is one of the best places to start that, because that's easier for people. Either they buy a table or they sell tickets to their friends. That's one of the easier ways. And then what's key there is follow up, right? Okay, so you brought some friends to this dinner. If you don't do anything with that afterwards, you have 10 people at a table. Only two to four are really going to be super interested in your organization.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to figure out who those 2 to 4 are by doing that follow up and doing it promptly after the event. Asking the board members to follow up, and then working with them on those strategies.
Okay.
Sometimes people do that, and then nothing happens, and then they come to the dinner again next year, but nobody's contacted in the meantime to see if they want to get involved.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, great. Anything else? Any other questions or comments? Experiences you want to share? Okay. Well, great. We're a little bit after 11, so I think we will say goodbye. It looks like Lily has had to leave us. So thanks again. I know she'll be sending this out to all of you. And there's Lily's back. Anything else, Lily, before we wrap up? Oh, Lily, I think you're on mute.
Thank you. I just wanted to point out, you had mentioned earlier about using Forefront's library resources. There really is just a wealth of information that's available to you through our library. You can simply go to our website and look on our library resources page. If you email library@myforefront.org, you can set up an appointment with a librarian and just ask them questions. But primarily, we provide grant search and individual donor research support. So for those of you that are looking to diversify your funding, that would be a really good place to start. And on December 10th from 9:30 to 11, we are doing a live workshop in Chicago on using our library to find grants. So if any of you are interested in learning more about that, you can go to our event page at myforefront.org or reach out to me specifically. We hope to see you again.
Yeah. Terrific. All right. Well, everyone have a great day. Thanks again. And any questions?
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Tina, is there anything else that you want to send along? I will send a kind of a follow-up, just thanking everybody for coming. We'll send them a link to the presentation today or the webinar today in case they want to review it later. Is there anything else that you want to include or would like me to include in that?
I don't think so. I mean, I think the slides are pretty comprehensive. So I think that's it.
Excellent.
Okay, great. Well, that was good. It's always a pity more people didn't join. But yeah.
Their loss. We had a good group, I think. They seemed pretty interested.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you again so much, Tina. If you'd ever consider coming down to my neck of the woods, I certainly would love to have you teach some workshops locally.
Yeah. How far are you guys?
Galesburg is about 3 hours from Chicago, but we have an Amtrak station, so it's a comfy ride right from downtown Chicago to our downtown train station. So
okay, yeah, I'm open to it. Do you have how many nonprofits do you have in your area?
Oh gosh, there's like 400 registered nonprofits. I work kind of on a daily basis with about 50 different organizations. At various times, I manage something called the Nonprofit Network. So we have bundled a Forefront membership with our chamber to try and encourage nonprofits to envision themselves as part of the economy and to take advantage of those benefits.
Yeah.
And so we have about 30 members in that group who are engaging in our workshops, who of course are Forefront members through that sub-association, I guess, we have a little bit of trouble kind of defining what it is because it's so kind of unique in its structure. But you know, the hardest thing is just always finding consultants and teachers that have the skills that we want to share with our members, but you know, who are also able to come down. And we can, of course, reimburse travel if you do come down.
I'd be happy to. You know, I have more time now. So yeah, I mean, if you think of something like after the first year, yeah, I'm around.
I mean, and just kind of me just building up an awareness of who is willing. So, you know, when we start in the spring looking at fall 2020, spring 21 training, it'll be nice. Fundraising is one that'll, you know, that's a constant nonprofit educational need, especially, you know, diversifying your strategies. I think people really, especially in my area, have a hard time with that. They're really all individual, you know, face-to-face donor relations and maybe a grant here or there, but that's about the extent of it. So
yeah, I mean, one thing I definitely would want to be mindful of is I know that's a challenge for organizations. Even you know, I did most of my work in Cook County. At one point I worked in Lake County, and I was even shocked at the number of foundations who didn't even cross the Cook County line, right?
mm-hmm.
It was just a lot less. And I was on a board at a small nonprofit up in northern Lake County, and you know, there's just very few options there for that. So I definitely would want to be mindful of, obviously I used a lot of examples here today in the Chicagoland community, which that's my knowledge base. So I'd want to be mindful of that too, and be able to do a little research and learn a little bit more from you about the community there, and where a lot of their receive their, but you know, I think that key thing is, and that's why I started with those stats, is everybody thinks that foundations and corporations give up the majority of the money, right? I don't know why people think that, but they really don't realize how much individuals are so important. And you know, that's the most time consuming too, because it takes a long time to develop those relationships and to find new donors. But that's the one thing why I always start there when talking about that, because sometimes I'll hear from people, well, we don't have any foundations in this area. But it's like, well, building relationships with individuals in the community. But there again, too, differences in capacity in different areas.
Yeah. Did you say, did I hear you correct that you did maybe you just did this for your own board, a training on like engaging the board in activities that aren't necessarily asking for money, but the other roles that they can play? I know that's that one made my ears perk up a little bit when you said that.
Yeah, I definitely, you know, it's hard because you need, you know, as fundraisers, we always get frustrated with board members who don't want to raise money, right? Because if you're not going to raise money and give generously to an organization, it's very hard for us to go out there and ask others to do it. But I always talk, there's this very small percentage who like to raise money and are good at it. And then there's a small percentage over here on boards, and it's been true of every board I've worked with, who they will never raise money. It doesn't matter what you do. But maybe they're on the board for other content expertise. You really got to work with the people in the middle to figure out how they can be successful. And that's also building that relationship. It's also having the right person as chair of your board. I was at a nonprofit who the chair sat there right after we presented on the annual fund plan, where she said, she told everybody they need to do what they needed to do, but she personally didn't enjoy it. She never liked raising money for the annual fund. So it's like, oh boy, you know, so it's having the right messenger, but then also, you know, the development staff and the ED really building those relationships with the board members to figure out you can help them be successful. And like I said, and how they can be involved in different ways, right? So it's maybe getting those people to do thank you calls first. And, you know, just finding ways that, you know, different boards are different. It all kind of depends. on what works for them. But yeah, if you wanted to do something that would focus on, people working with their boards. I know, you said you had a meeting this morning with a group of EDs. I'm not sure you hear consistently.
I mean, that one actually came up in the conversation. We were talking about the minimum wage increases mostly today. We were trying to talk about building healthy executive board staff relationships, but it just kind of, that's really weighing heavily on the minds of the nonprofits that I'm working with, because they know they can't fundraise their way. They can't react to these changes by solely fundraising. So I think they're really struggling to come up with other ways to creative solutions to increasing their income or finding other ways to provide service without compromising their bottom line, I guess. So that was, but the frustrations of a non-fundraising board. And, I recently listened to an old webinar where, somebody had said, I've come to accept that everybody on my board isn't and shouldn't be fundraising, because like you said, it's all about having the right messenger. And
right.
I wouldn't necessarily want anybody to get behind, the wheel of the plane if I was flying to Boston. So why would you force that work on others? So I think not only emphasizing that there are other ways that the board can participate, but teaching the executives and the chairs maybe how to cultivate that information out of those board members.
Yeah, it is really important. And it's also important to, I think one of the things that happens with nonprofits too, we want, different people bring different expertise to boards, and you should have that. And we need to have boards, and that may include some organizations 2 clients on their boards, right? But it's, what I always tell people, you still have to find, everybody has to give 100%. Like and I would explain this to boards too, when I would fill out a grant application and they ask what percentage of the board gives, I need to write 100%.
Yeah.
And like, funders ask that? Yeah, they do, right? So everybody has to give at their capacity. That's why it's, I think it's really important in board recruitment too, when EDs have to be involved in why are you bringing somebody on a board, right? You don't want to have a board that just fundraises, but you need to also, people have to tick off many boxes, right? And one of the things that happens too is when boards, kind of recruit their own replacements, or they bring on people who are their friends, then you end up with a situation where, you have to be really careful to what the chair and the nominating committee is actually saying at those meetings of recruiting new board members, right? If they're telling them, oh, you don't need to fundraise, or, then that you're sending off on a really bad, starting at a bad place.
Or if you realize that you weren't clear about your expectations with previous board members and you were hoping to curb that with new ones, they've just undermined that whole, if they're like, oh, you don't have to do much, you don't have to, you don't have to say much. Yeah. It's a struggle.
And the thing that happened at the organization I was with, that we changed the board over in 6 years. We had to. We had this capital campaign. We had people who were giving us 6- and 7-figure gifts. Board members who aren't contributing to the organization. So the board ended up going to a board giving minimum, and it was very unpopular with some of the longer term board members, and they left. But it's kind of like, things change. You have to do that. But yeah, I mean, it's really important that people put stuff in writing, that they give a packet, when they meet with them about the expectations. So there's consistency, right? You can have board members, if 3 people on a nominating committee, and one person does a really good job and shares everything at that meeting, and the other person kind of glosses over things. And then somebody gets, I didn't know I need to do this. So yeah. Well, great. Well, it was really terrific, Lily. I appreciate it. And
thank you.
Be in touch if you want.
Yeah, definitely. I will. I'll reach out sometime after the sometime after the new year kind of settles in, and we can talk about how best to put your knowledge to work in our area.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to. And like I said, it might be something different. It might be something more customized to the executive directors or board relations or, yeah, I'd be happy to come down.
Great. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, Tina, have a good rest of your week and a good weekend.
Yeah, you too. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.